you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters, and stands at the nexus of machine learning and white-tailed deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to tetherednation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, tethered one sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to tetherednation.com. Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Spartan Forge. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 300. Today I'm coming to you from elk camp atop a mountain in northern Idaho with my buddies Wilson Mcswain and Koby Owens. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you are doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. I hope you are feeling better than me. I literally just flew in from my elk trip from Idaho, and I caught the red eye from Phoenix to Pennsylvania. So there hasn't been a lot of sleep yet, so I'm a little delirious, but I wanted to make sure I got a podcast out for you guys this week. It is a Monday, so I hunted, I think it's Monday. Hunted through Saturday and basically flew all day Sunday. Started in the morning on Sunday. Had a super long layover in Phoenix, so I had a couple beers at the bar, and then really didn't sleep a wink from Phoenix to Philadelphia. So a little worse for wear today. But just going to kind of jump straight into things and not beat around the bush here. Have a cool show for you guys today. I took a very small recording rig with me into the mountains. It's super light. I have a little setup that I can use my phone for kind of impromptu podcast opportunities. And so took that along with me and was anticipating recording a podcast while we were on the mountain because it wasn't a lot of weight to carry. So we did just that. However, it's in two sections. The first section is us kind of really in camp. Talking about what had happened up until the point that we recorded the podcast. The second half is me just kind of giving you the final recount of the final 2 to 3 hunts that we had before we pulled camp. We kind of ran out of time to kind of have everyone was kind of moving in different directions. Wilson's family was out of town. Our buddy Koby, who was with us filming things, he had some work he had to get to right after this hunt, so he had to prep for some additional hunts and work that he had to kind of get back to either Montana, and I think he was then maybe headed back to Utah for another hunt. So he had to kind of boogie and get out of town as well. So that is why it is split up into kind of two sections the way that it is. And so the audio quality is good from the mountain. It's just, I'll give you guys a heads up. It's slightly different than what you're used to hearing just because I was using some different stuff to get the recording done. So with that, if you haven't picked up your Skull Brew Coffee pour over packs for your hunting trips, make sure you do that. Go to skullbrewcoffee.com, get the pour over packs. You'll be set to go. Make sure you're checking out the Truth from the Stand merch at truthfromthestand.com. And otherwise, we're going to go ahead and just jump in today's show. And as always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. A little different today. We are coming to you on location, like a weather girl.
5,600 feet up in the air.
Right. We are in Idaho Elk Camp with two buddies. Mr. Wilson Mcswain, you know him, you love him.
How's it going?
Longtime offender.
Multi-offender.
And we have our new buddy, Mr. Koby Owen. What's going on, man?
Not much, just elk hunting, living the dream.
That's right. Koby is along doing some filming. He's got some handy camera work.
Yeah, we're here just documenting the experience, doing a little film, and then, of course, snapping photos, because that's what we do.
Yeah, and on the side, he's also providing me my medical kit to doctor up my feet.
Tape, horse wrap, blister stuff, ointment, whatever you need, I got it.
I wish I had some hooves, actually. I'd be in a lot better shape if I did. Hooves. I don't know is it hooves? Hoofs? Hoofs?
I don't know.
What is it?
Hooves would
I
be
don't know what
multiple.
you're talking about.
So horse feet. Yeah.
Horses? Oh, okay.
Is it hooves or is it hoofs?
Depends on what side of the Mississippi you're from.
I don't know.
I get people make fun of me all the time because I say hooves.
You also say bulls.
Hoofs.
Like
Bull.
bull elk.
Bull.
It's a bull elk.
Bull.
There you go. Bull.
Bull elk.
It's a bull elk, yeah.
All right. Anyway, hooked on phonics. It didn't work for me, apparently.
Yeah, should we do Cribs, audio version of Cribs real quick?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're actually in, we'll just go over our accommodations. Like, where we're 5,200 something, 5,400 feet. That's where we're hunting. We climbed the top of this mountain, set up camp. We've been here since Monday. It's currently Thursday. And we've got our 3 tents set up. We've got a nice kind of little spot that overlooks. You can see a couple of the houses down below us and stuff like that, but it's just an awesome view. Kind of centrally located to where we can get to the places we want to get to on top of the mountain to elk hunt. Wilson put in a lot of work over the last year and this summer locating where our herd might be up here, and so we'll kind of talk about that in a second, but we'll start with where we're at currently. We're in Koby's tent recording this. We just had a morning hunt, came back from that to grab some coffee, some breakfast, and give us a rundown of your digs. Like, this is the Idaho Elk Camp Cribs episode.
Yeah, so we are in Seek Outside Cimarron Light tent right now, and I just got this thing, first rip for it, and I am stoked on it, already in love with it. It's a floorless teepee tent, and we got our mics strapped on the center pole, which is a carbon fiber pole, and the tent and the pole combined, I looked it up, I think it was like 3 pounds 3 ounces, something like that, so pretty light, and pitches pretty decent. I just needed something that I could live out of for the entire fall, have some space.
You have a ton of space in here.
Yeah, exactly. We're sitting 3 in here comfortably. We could have 2-3 more sitting around here to record and be fine. I bet I could sleep 4 in here.
Without a stove.
Yeah. Without gear inside the tent. You could get some gear in here, but, you could be a 3-man. We could all be in here if we really needed to, but You guys got your tents, of course.
And we have a lot of gear, just like, because we're up here for a week. So, and you have all your camera gear. We've got 3, we each have, frame packs and just
6 days of food adds up to a lot of.
If you're Koby, it's like 12 days of food for a normal person.
Yeah, I don't know. I brought in a lot of poundage of food. But.
Yeah. So that's Koby's setup for his tent. Wilson, what are you using?
I've had the same tent for quite a few years now. Just a little 2-man Kelty guide sort of tent, and it sets up in about 18 seconds, and it's been an awesome tent for me.
It's 2-man, right?
Yeah, it's a 2-man with nothing else in it. Like my wife and I go camping without the kids, we take that tent because it's super easy to set up. You can't, if there's 2 people in it, you can't even bring your iPhone in it because there's not enough room for it. But
I feel like our tents are about the same size.
Yeah.
I have a big Agnes. I think it's HVUL2 is like the technical. And I only know that because I did so much freaking research, trying to figure out what tent I was going to get. And it's a 2-man with vestibules on each side, which is nice because I just kind of stash my bow under one side, and then under the other side I stash my pack and my boots, and that way I can keep most of that stuff out of my tent. It sleeps nice. I don't have any problems with it at the moment. Really windy last night.
Yeah.
Held up well in the wind.
I didn't even notice the wind.
I only noticed it when I got up this morning at like 4:30. Wind was ripping. So
Yeah, it's it held up well in the wind, and so I'm pleased so far. Haven't had a lot of rain. A little bit yesterday, but I wouldn't really consider that rain. It was more of a spitting rain.
it was a light sprinkle.
Yeah, we got a couple squalls that moved through.
Yeah. But the wind was nice. It kept it nice and kind of cool. Some air moving through the tent, even though it had to be closed up for fear of rain.
Yeah.
But
Who knows what happened before we got here, though, because that big lightning storm did move through while we were out on our evening sit. So
Yeah,
just
exactly.
after.
So I guess we'll just jump right into it and document the hunt so far. So I'll start with Monday. No, what day? Sunday I got into town.
Yep.
I flew in on Sunday. Wilson and Koby picked me up at the airport. We'll fast forward through this. We basically just spent that day we went out to dinner to hang out, just to have one last meal before we ran up on the mountain. And then basically spent that evening just kind of packing, getting everything ready to go because we wanted to leave the next morning because we had to stop by what's it called?
North 40.
North 40, like a big box kind of outdoor store to pick up some dehydrated meals and some of the stuff that I didn't fly out with me. And then we left from there and then headed to the mountain and hiked up. Everyone had heavy packs. Koby had an extremely heavy pack.
Yeah.
It's like, I think with all the camera gear and everything, I think it topped out at like 84 pounds.
Yeah.
And he brought enough food to like feed a small village for a month.
It's 6 days of food for me, but
You calorie count though.
yeah, this one was a little bit of a throwing a couple extra, but when I do these mountain hunts, I always come back a couple pounds lighter, and right now I got pretty much almost 5 weeks straight of it, so I'm trying to keep on the pounds at the front end of this and get through the season. So I brought some extra food to stay good this trip, but it's gonna be worth it.
Yeah. Well, you just got off a Utah high country muley trip that you just filmed as well. So it's like you're literally living in the mountains for like 6 straight weeks almost, right?
Yeah, I my goal is not to sleep in a real bed in September. So
Right. Well, you're off to a good start. You might as well extend it to part of August because I mean you've been gone for like the last 2 weeks.
My
of
couch
August,
would
too,
be
right?
the last thing you slept on.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, but that's like
couches, and that was in August. That was a comfortable couch. I'll give you that for sure. But no, that
it was
was
still
August.
But you still have to have those like, I'm getting to the place that I'm going to be.
Oh, yeah.
And I might have a day where I'm staying at someone's house or a hotel until like everyone gets into town to go up to camp or whatever.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's not like, I feel like that's okay. Like,
I'm not gonna count that as a bed. I know I'm talking like a bed or my place.
Home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, we'll spend a lot of nights in the truck too. I have a topper set up, good sleep system in there, and so that's pretty much home in the fall when I'm not in the tent. So
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a sweet setup. So Koby had a very heavy pack. I don't know. Ours were probably 65 pounds roughly
Yeah, I think I weighed it at the house and it was 57.
without food.
No,
that was
with
with food.
It was just
That
without
was
my
out your
bow.
bow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 60 pounds.
And maybe water bottle or two.
My water was
Like,
full. Yeah, I was
yeah.
pretty much well off. But I knew I was going to be right around that 50 to 60 mark when I packed my bag and unpacked like 15 million times before I came.
Yeah.
My bag was lighter because I forgot all my lunches in my freezer.
You did.
Yeah, all your peanut butter and jellies. Oh.
So Wilson was so stoked to have peanut butter and jellies for lunch every day.
And pro tip, if you vacuum seal a peanut butter and
so
jelly,
good.
it kind of turns into like a mini, like it smashes it up like a mini granola bar almost.
Yeah.
And it's so good.
Yeah. It's,
And there's all in my refrigerator at home right now in my garage. I was like, oh, I'll put them in here. They'll be cold for the morning. I'll put in my pack. Got up, and I was like, dang, I bet they're real cold.
I bet they're real cold and real good. I've been eating one a day. You know,
No,
they're good.
I watch you eat it.
Yeah,
They're
I shared
good.
I shared it with you. I
Yeah, I
shared
got a
one with
bite.
you. Yeah, you got a bite. So we got to where we were planning to hike into the start of the trailhead, and like I said earlier, where we're camping at, I forget exactly. It's like 52 or 5,400 feet
Yeah.
roughly, but it's just about somewhere between a mile and a half, a mile or 2 miles, like just depending.
Just,
like if you're using my watch GPS, if you're tracking it with like a Spartan Forge or whatever the case is to mark your track. So just call it, roughly 2 miles. And I want to say the elevation gain in those 2 miles was, I think, 1,400 feet or 1,500 feet. So a little bit of a gnarly climb. I think it took us an hour and 45 minutes to get from the beginning of the trailhead to actual camp. So not a trip you want to do often.
No, we took it easy too, because this first day we weren't trying to burn our legs out, because I knew we were going to do a lot of hiking out from here and everything's down.
Mm-hmm.
Until you started sprinting.
Yeah.
What was that? Oh, yeah, Sometimes I get like just some juice of energy, and I got to get it out real quick. So
yeah. But we were very fortunate enough to have that good trail, because the terrain here is not as forgiving. Like, it is thick underforage, trees everywhere. We have one ridge that has a park on it pretty much, so it's thick country.
Yeah, that's the one thing. We'll get into that here in a second. So we got here, we set up camp, to your point, a nice kind of like hiking trail that we were able to use as access to get in. Got camp set up pretty well, and then Monday was really just kind of, once we got up here, just was getting camp set up, getting tent set up, kind of getting situated for the week. And then that evening we went and
we hiked the peak.
We hiked to this peak that's not far from here, relatively speaking. And we had dinner there. We took some jet boils and just had some dinner while we were sitting there. And then we did some glassing, and we saw our first elk, like, of the trip.
Yeah,
while we were there.
Yeah, you had a good spot.
Yeah, which was cool. So spirits were high after seeing elk. We were like, sweet,
And that was not in a spot we were hunting. It was like
no.
Across 2 basins, down in a little drainage.
A fur piece.
Yeah. And it was like, hey, look, there's an elk. And then, oh, look, there's another one. But it was just good to see elk on the first day in this area, because I spent a lot of time in this area, and it seems like the concentration of elk are from the peak that we're at all the way down to that drainage system where we saw those other elk. So
yeah. So come back to camp, hop in bed, get a good night's sleep. And so the game plan really at that point was, I'm trying to remember, what did we do the first morning? Did we go down the...
We went and sat down the ridge.
Oh, yeah, because we went and checked the camera and stuff. Yeah. And we didn't have an encounter that morning, did we? No.
Nope.
That was later in the afternoon.
Well, we went in a little bit later that day, too. So we got up, cruised real slow through the timber
to
the ridge.
We sat down a couple different times, some calling sequences to see if we could get anything.
Saw deer.
We did see 2 deer.
2 deer.
Yeah, 2 deer. And then we made it to check a camera. And, we checked cameras when we drove into the trailhead, like, because there was a camera to check there.
Yeah, off the road.
And we had elk on that. And then, was it Monday or was it Tuesday? Tuesday was opening day. Yeah, so Tuesday, when we went down the ridge to get to that camera, we just kind of still hunted our way through, sat down, had a couple calling sequences, and didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, made it to the camera. There were elk on camera. And here on this hunt, just put it out there, I'm trying to kill any legal elk on the hunt.
100%.
I'm not looking for a mega bull. I'm not looking for a branch antler, a raghorn. Like, if it's legal, I want to shoot it. That's my kind of criteria. And there were 2 that were legal, shootable, spike and like a split spike.
Yeah, spike fork.
Yeah, spork. In Pennsylvania, we would call that an 11 point or a 12 point. So, to fast forward, we ended up sitting that general area later that evening, and we had an awesome plan kind of dialed in. And Wilson, you kind of dialed up that plan because you're the one who had all the familiarity with the area.
Yeah, they bed off this little knob in the ridge, and so we crept in there like 5 o'clock. We got down there.
Yeah,
we rolled in at like 5 and set up in what we thought was going to be a good spot. The thermals were pulling our wind just right up over the top, and there's kind of like 2 trail options. And Clint, what was that far one? 48 yards.
Yeah, 48 yards.
48 yards to the far trail, like 23 to this middle trail, and I looked at Clint and I said, worst case scenario is they come on this trail that's about 2 yards to my left. And we wait there about 6:30, 6:45. We started hearing movement in the timber. We did some calling.
No responses to anything.
Yeah, we heard no elk sounds at all this whole trip. And then next thing you know, we just start hearing the footprints of multiple elk. And I think you saw...
It was a good like 15, 20 minutes between like hearing them down in the timber below us and then like a little bit more down the ridge line to our left. And
they were
Clint and Wilson are both to my left here. I'm tucked back in the tree, and I look at Wilson and I just see big ol' forehead in the tree behind me that's not Wilson's. And I'm like, elk. And I'm like, antlers. I'm like, no, because there was a spike with antlers behind it, but the lead cow was first, and the big old ears were about as big as the spikes.
Right.
And I started rolling the camera, and she just froze right there.
Honestly, 5 or less yards.
Yeah.
She was right she was touching the tree that I was also touching.
Yeah. And she never really saw us or what was up, but she just knew something wasn't right.
Our wind was good, so she didn't wind us.
Yeah. But, I mean, we weren't probably tucked back in as good as we should have been, but we were in a good spot.
Yeah.
We weren't in a bad spot.
If
by
they
any
came
means.
from
But
anywhere
like
other
you
than-
said, worst case scenario. It was worst case scenario where
Because
they
any
came.
other trail, we would have been
Good to go.
Yeah.
borderline pretty good.
So they bust out, and it was a stampede. There's probably
Jeez.
I'd say that was 8 to a dozen of them.
Yep.
Yep.
The herds don't get too big in this country. A big herd's like 20 elk, honestly.
Right.
So
Right.
This time of year for sure. Like,
yeah.
So that was the first hunt. So
Yeah,
or that was
spirits
the first
were real
day.
high.
Yeah, we were stoked. Like, we got into elk because the thing is, and we'll talk a little bit about the country that we're in too, because I think Koby, you mentioned it earlier, is that just finding elk here, when they're not bugling and you're trying to locate and just find where elk might be, is hard. Just because of how thick things are, there's not a lot of glassing opportunities.
Glassing opportunities are minimal, and the glassing opportunity we had, Wilson picked a bone up. Like it's getting lucky like that. But it's tough country to find elk in, and I say don't leave elk to find elk. So we're camped here within a mile of this ridge line that we know there's elk on, and we've gotten into them. And we haven't busted them out, so there's no reason for us to pull up roots and go into somewhere that we don't know there's elk in. We're fortunate that Wilson put in the time and effort to find us a decent little herd here.
Yeah. So we felt pretty good. I mean, it was a bummer that that opportunity didn't come to fruition because out of Wilson's
Day
periphery,
one.
he actually saw the spike I would have shot. He was on his
Yeah.
way to being in our pack.
Yeah, we needed like 3 more minutes.
Yeah.
We needed her to get out into the little opening.
So then fast forward, so we come back to camp, get a good night's sleep, and then yesterday we were like, you know what, the wind was still good. Let's go back down the ridge. We know there's elk are there, and we're kind of almost hunting them like a for people that are listening that might be more familiar with whitetail hunting, we're hunting them almost more similar to how you would hunt early season whitetails, where you've got a herd of elk or you have deer that are living or bedding in a certain area, and they're feeding in another area, and they're point A, point B, and you just kind of figure out what trail or what terrain features they're using to get from here to there. Because they're not bugling right now, that's really the only play that we have. And so we were like, well, we know that they like to use that in the evenings, and we know they like to use it in the mornings. And occasionally maybe in the afternoon once in a great while, but consistently around the same time in the mornings and the evenings. So we were like, you know what, wind's still good. Let's head back down there in the morning first thing and see if we can't kind of catch him trying to head back to bed off the point of that ridge. And so we get down there plenty early, get set up, and what happened?
Yeah, and we set up a little bit farther away from the bedding that morning, didn't we?
Well, I think it's debatable where they're bedding though, because like we thought originally they were down off that right side, and I don't know if it's east or west. I can't remember.
That would be northeast.
Northeast.
Yeah.
But I think after we saw the elk actually come through, how they came through the evening before makes me believe they're actually bedded off like the southern side of that ridge, the opposite side.
Yeah.
Or down off that point, which would be kind of weird because there is a big bull that lives in this general area. Wilson saw him last year, saw him this summer.
Yep.
He's bedded not far from where we've been setting up.
Yeah,
that's kind of like
north side of the ridge, like right on the ridge. But yeah, we set up and we called for a while in the morning, and then yeah, I'm trying to remember. So
nothing was happening.
Nothing was happening.
We were
It was
just
deader
we'd
than
been
dead.
there for a while, and I don't remember why we decided to walk up on the ridge, but we walked up on the ridge and stood there for a good 10, probably maybe even 15, just did a little bit of calling again. And we were just going to go back to our packs and make some breakfast. And we're about 20 steps into it and went from whispering to a pretty quiet voice still, but
talking as we're getting ready to walk away from hunting. We're like, all right, let's go back to camp. Let's make some breakfast, figure out what we're going to do for this afternoon, this evening.
And then, typical crashing through the timber. And there was elk within 100 yards.
Yeah.
And so that's elk hunting right there in timber.
Right, yeah. When you can't see them, that's the hardest part because it's so hard to get a visual on them. Like we were saying it last night as I don't remember if we were at the truck, because we actually, did go to a different spot than last evening. But, Wilson and I were just talking that the challenge with here is that when you have an opportunity here, it's like it happens right now. Like they're right on top of you. Like you don't really get to watch them from like 80 yards or 100 yards out and watch them come in and try to figure out where you're going to get your shot opportunity. And like, it's like when the shot opportunity happens, like you have to take it. Like when you see them, you need to be drawn and ready to shoot because they're already on top of you.
Yeah. And you can't let your guard down. And we've let our guard down slightly. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's going to be key is last night when we were set up,
I was ready
you were much more ready last night.
We were all better.
Yeah, and I knew what I was hearing.
In. So we ended up, after those elk had no idea what happened, why they ran. They just heard some movement, and so they pieced out. So we said, let's give that spot a rest. And I'm
going to add one thing here. Wind was good again, which in elk hunting, the wind's been good for us. It's been consistent here, and a lot of time the wind is what gets you.
Yeah. No, the wind hasn't.
Well, and the only time it was going to
really
get us
screwed us yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was let's get to last night then. Right?
Yeah.
So after we had that morning hunt, we were to Wilson's point. We were like, hey, you know what? We've been in here twice. We've had encounters twice. They don't know really what has happened. They haven't winded us or anything like that. So let's go ahead and just roll out of here. They're super comfortable in here. Let's give them some time. Let's just go. Maybe we can try to figure out a way to get over to that little kind of whatever it is, rock slide, meadow, whatever it was that we glassed those elk up in.
Dirt washout.
It's just washout with a worn trail in it. It's where you glassed up the elk.
And it's 100 yards above a big water source.
Yeah, you can see the trail go directly down to the water, like when you're glassing, and on Spartan Forge.
Yeah, totally. And so the plan was, we were like, hey, let's see if we can't make our way over to there. If nothing else, we were actually needed to go get water too, re-up on water. So we were like, let's hike back down to the truck. We'll re-up on water. We'll go hunt the afternoon, see if we can't make it over to that washout, and maybe hunt those elk over there that are headed down to that water source. And it was hot yesterday. It was like 92, 93 degrees.
Yeah, it was up there.
So we were like, water seems to be a fair play. So we ended up doing that. Once we got down there, we drove around a little bit, did some glass in some other places, came back, and ended up hiking in. What we could see on the maps. When we would pull up Spartan Forge, we could look and we could see there was a trail. Right now, this is the one thing where it's like some things are deceiving. It's like, it shows on the map that there's a way in where it's not all timbered and it looks like there's a trail. Right.
Yeah, and it looked like there was even a game trail on the trail itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Which should have been a light bulb for me, that if there's a game trail on what looks like a trail, the trail's not actually a trail.
That trail was actually just a swath of timber that was either an old dozer line from a fire, an old skidder line from logging. I'm not really sure, but yeah, an old swath of timber that was taken out of there at some point in time.
20 yards
with
wide.
a very minimal trail, and that swath wasn't bare ground. It was
Gnarly.
it's the thickest underforage we've had to deal with.
Oh,
yeah.
It was basically
so,
bushwhacking our way through for a lot of it. A lot of deadfall in there that we were having to climb over.
well, side hilling.
All side hilling, yeah, the entire way.
And we got a mile in, and then
we were a little further than a mile in.
to when
we
all
found
the
a good
elk
sign.
signs started to pop
yeah.
off.
Yeah.
We found
Yeah.
water, and every bush that was head high,
Found a
chest high,
wallow.
was chomped off. There was so much browsing in that whole area.
And freshest elk shit
That
poop
we found.
that we found
Yeah.
so far. And it was last couple days, yesterday, day before that.
Yeah.
And
And we found a wallow, too.
yeah,
The first wallow
just
that we
after
found.
that, it was kind of a big bend, and then all the timber around it was kind of unique. You know, it was a bare, not really anything growing under
Not
there.
like
It
what
was-
we
it
have
was
here. Here it's
yeah,
just like a ton of undergrowth.
It was,
And there it was like almost like pine barren. Like,
yeah.
Which you'll see on this front side when we go down. There is that area, and then you can tell you're like, oh, here's elk bedding, because you come to this like thicket of 4 to 5 foot tall cedars and pines that these elk just pile into on these hillsides
That makes sense.
off the ridge. But over there it was the same thing. It was way more open than it is up here.
right.
Yeah, but we decided to keep going a little bit and see if we couldn't get to where we had seen the elk.
It was
Even we
We made it a quarter
had,
of the way, I think.
Well, it was almost 2 miles to get there, and we made it a mile and a half.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we were close, but it took us an hour and 45 minutes to go that
Dude, it
mile
was-
and a half.
And there was no elevation change. This is flat.
It was all
like,
flat. Just
We're on the
Side
same
hilling,
topo line,
just
just side
thick,
hilling,
yeah.
thick.
yeah. So we made the
Bear
You
trail,
can't be
bear
quiet
tunnels.
either. You can't be quiet.
Oh,
You're-
no.
we're
We
not
weren't sneaking up on anything.
anything.
Yeah.
We're just trying to find a good place to sit, do some calling sequences, you know. But
So then we did. So
We
then
did
we
that.
Yeah. So then we talked. We were like we actually found like a place near a game trail. We set up on. We did some calling, and then we kind of reconvened. And was like, look, we're not going to make it down to that washout in time to really hunt it effectively, and this is just a nightmare trying to get in here. And we've been passing good elk sign to go somewhere where we saw 2 elk walk through. Don't really know why they were there or if they may or may not be back, right? Like
Yeah,
be
someone
chasing
could have
ghosts.
bumped them. I don't
Yeah.
know how, but like, there's a million reasons why they could have been
Right.
there.
So we thought, you know what? The sign that we passed was the best, freshest sign that we've seen so far. Why don't we double back and sit that front side of that saddle that had the water kind of running out of it? Because it was the one place there was running water coming out of the mountain.
Yeah, good amount too.
Yeah. So, and being hot, it seemed like a good place. So we went back there, set up, and ended up riding out the evening there. And it was a slow go at the beginning, which is kind of what we're finding to be kind of typical right now. Because, you know, we're not hearing bugles and stuff like that. So again, we're kind of hunting them like whitetail to a degree. We're having to read sign, figure out where they might be, what are they going to want. It's hot. Water seems like a good choice.
Yeah.
And so we had a really good setup here, and then all of a sudden, I don't even know what time it was, maybe 7 o'clock or 6:30 when you did this.
Oh yeah, I did my
I
little hand
just
puppet.
yeah, he's tucked in behind a log behind me, and
I can't see him at all.
Clint's in front of me, and I just see this hand pop up from behind the log, and these little fingers go walking and like pointing the timber behind me. I'm like, oh, something's walking up behind us, and sure enough, you know, 2 minutes later, we hear stick break and kind of
Here's
hear
like-
it just moving behind us from right to left into the head of this draw towards the water. But back in the timber behind us keeps moving towards where we think it's going to come out. And
Yeah, we had there was 2 different trails that were coming out of that timber near that water. There was one that was furthest from it was about 30 yards.
Yeah,
And there was
okay.
the one right off my shoulder, and that was like 15
yeah.
18 yards. And that was why we chose to set up there, because we were tucked back far enough to where if they came out, they were almost, when they came out, going to be past us to a degree. You know,
Yeah.
it was going to be a slight quartering away shot, which is perfect. Like their head's kind of away from you, so they can't see me draw. And I had some breakup. Wilson had a doe come out to his right. So he had a deer pop out.
And
we saw a big buck too.
Yeah, I actually thought about shooting the doe because you guys couldn't see me, and I have a doe.
You never told me this. You had wait, what? I'm just hearing about this.
After I put my hands up and did the hand motions, a doe came out at like 15 yards.
I
and
never
just stood
saw
there
it.
broadside.
That
I
log
could
blocked
have
it.
drained her, and then been like, I would have stood up and been like, "Hey guys, I shot a deer," because I have whitetail tag. I have a tag I could use for a doe. So, and
I had no idea actually.
yeah,
That's
and then
wild.
she just kind of popped back in the timber, but she went out the way we came in. She did not come because I could hear her footsteps dissipating in the distant.
So we're sitting there, we're hearing all this movement, and like the movement got real close to you and I. Like I could hear it like really clearly behind us.
It was, and then we heard it in the water.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, it's gonna come out on this trail.
Like I'm thinking like we've got like
I had been recording for about a minute. I'm like, okay, like any second it's gonna pop out.
yeah, and I thought the same thing. I have my bow up, I'm ready, and all of a sudden, like you said maybe 10 minutes before that, because I mentioned earlier in the day, I was like, hey, it's supposed to maybe rain today. And about 10 minutes before we heard it, I started getting like focused on that because like we were hearing stuff behind us. You're like, hey, here comes this rain you were talking about. And like the clouds were kind of forming.
yeah.
And all of a sudden you could just hear the wind coming. Like for like 2 minutes, you're like, the wind's on its way, the wind's on its way.
But no, before that, but 2 minutes before that,
The gunshot.
Oh, the
gunshots.
yeah.
So there's a road probably 3/4 of a mile up above it on the ridge, and there's some people camped up there. And yeah, as we hear the noise getting close to coming out in the opening, we hear boom, 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 boom,
Just
boom.
some freedom rounds,
Just-
right? Raining over
And
our
then
head.
rocks kick over where the animal is, and then on the complete adjacent side across from us, where I thought I'd actually heard some other noise earlier, I hear rocks tumble as well. No idea what that was, but the sound behind us, to me, sounded a little bit more elky than deer. It just sounded a little larger.
Yeah.
And never know what it could have been, but it was feeling pretty good, like a pretty good situation.
Yeah.
And so it didn't completely bust out of there, because then we heard it again, just further away. But then, yeah, I'm like, I saw that storm coming. I looked at you and I was like, hey, here comes our wind.
Yep.
The wind had been good all night.
It was.
and
It was perfect for that spot, and it just switched like that.
Yep.
And was completely wrong, and so
and
We
then
got out of there real quick, though.
Yeah.
They got out of there. We got out of there.
I got almost hit by lightning.
yeah.
No, you didn't. It was over a mile away.
We had some
over a mile. It's pretty close.
We had some good. We had a good little show there for a hot minute. Got a little bit of rain on our way back to the truck. It looked for a second like it might get a little western for a second.
Yeah, it looked like it could have gotten like a big storm, but the big storm seemed to have averted us a little bit, and
Yeah.
we got some rain off the bat, and you guys sat in the rig and
Sat in the
cooked
truck
up
and watched you cook up some food.
yeah, I was hungry. I was like, I'm eating now before this hike up top. I was
Right.
like, I need food.
So that was basically that. The good news is that thing we think we found some more elk there, and as soon as the wind switched, we didn't waste any time. We just, as soon as it was wrong, we got up, grabbed our stuff, and took off and got
Yeah.
out of there. So we didn't booger anything up. So that feels like it's a huntable opportunity, for later in the trip. Like Koby said, we grabbed our water, grabbed all of our stuff, made the late night hike up in the dark back to camp. I don't remember what time we got here, like 9:30 or something like that, or getting
was
close
nice.
to 10.
Yeah.
It
9:45.
might have been even. Yeah, we were pushing 10. I know that.
So yeah, got back up here late, got to bed, and got back up early this morning, and walked into an area that we had been kind of looking at on maps, and we hunted this saddle, I guess, Monday afternoon, and
Tuesday.
Tuesday afternoon.
yeah, we
Monday.
did.
Yeah. Tuesday was the opener. Tuesday afternoon, we hunted a saddle that was kind of like down in this general area. And there's this point that comes off this peak that we wanted to kind of go check out. And so we went down there this morning, hunted that for a little bit, and nothing, no sounds. We thought maybe with like the temperature falling just a little bit today, we'd maybe get our first bugles of the trip, but we did not.
That'll be tonight.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And so then we just hoofed it back to camp. Decided we were going to have some breakfast since we had a late night take a load off of our feet. And then our plan for this evening is to go back down the ridge where we had those really good encounters and make one more play.
Better set up tonight.
Yeah, better set up tonight. Make one more play on those elk. If things go well tonight, and if we don't kill tonight, and the wind is good tomorrow, and we don't booger anything up, we'll probably hunt that tomorrow morning one more time. And then after that, we're probably going to pool camp and head down to the truck, and then truck hunt for truck camp for the next couple of days in and around that drainage we were in last night, because we know that there's plenty of elk sign in there. We thought we heard elk last night, so we feel like that's a good play. And then probably just glass in the afternoons and stuff like that, and drive around and see if we can spot an elk somewhere that we want to try to spot and stalk if that's possible. So that's kind of the plan for the trip. It's what's happened so far. It's been fun. I'm digging. I love the spot we're camping in.
Yeah,
you know.
We haven't touched on one thing though.
What's that?
What do you think about huckleberries?
Oh man,
heck
huckleberries. Yeah. So huckleberries are pop. I mean, I guess they're technically just about done now. We're still finding some decent ones, but
yeah,
there are huckleberry bushes everywhere, and some that we refer to as moose ticklers. Where they're just tall enough to tickle the nuts on a moose. You know, they're huge huckleberry bushes.
Gross huckleberry bushes.
Yeah, and so
I'm talking like probably some of the most huckleberry bushes I've ever seen in my life. That is what the underforage is straight huckleberries, and they are thick and it is nasty to walk through.
Yeah, but it makes a nice snack as you're kind of walking along.
Oh, it is great.
You just grab a handful and you're just kind of munching. You get that little pop of sour, a little pop of sweet.
Good. I've been saving them and putting them in my alpenfuels in the morning.
He's been saving them and putting it in his granola whenever when we have breakfast. But yeah, I tell you, that is a nice little kind of surprise, is just to be able to kind of graze. I don't know, there's something kind of interesting about being able to just kind of graze what the animals are grazing as you're kind of walking along hunting the animals.
Yeah.
That is kind of, yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like you just feel very connected. Where it's
also,
like we're all using the same stuff.
Nice to get some fruit in your diet up here, living off of mountain houses or in peak refuels and whatnot. So
yeah, we're living off
protein bars, honey stingers, you name it.
We're living off the usual camp fare. So yeah, the body definitely is appreciative of something natural and juicy. So, but that's it. It's been a lot of fun so far. I think the best is yet to come.
Mm-hmm.
Have a good feeling about the next 24 to 36 hours.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Any parting thoughts there, Mr. Mcswain?
No, I'm just thankful to have you guys out. I've been spending a whole bunch of time up here because this is the area that I'm going to hunt. And so it's fun. Like, I've never filled an elk tag.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm almost more excited to see you fill your tag this weekend, or the rest of this trip. Yeah, because it'll be rewarding because you can't see more than flipping 35 yards, and we got on a herd, and we're hoping to make the most of it.
Yeah, when it happens, it's going to happen in close quarters.
Yeah.
You know, it's
and then we're going to call all our friends and say, come help us get this elk out of this hill.
Yeah, because it's gnarly.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts from you, Mr. Owen?
Yeah, it's been a good one. Happy to be up here with you guys. I'm excited for our move tonight. I think we need to get down there a little bit further into the bedroom and get just tucked back in there with, good lanes in front of us. Like you said, it's going to 35 yards is far. It's going to be, I'm thinking 25 to 15 yards is where it's happening. So,
yeah.
But just make sure to be tucked back in there is, I think, going to be key for us, so that we don't get spotted.
Yeah, I'm appreciative of you both being here, Koby. I appreciate you being in camp, filming everything. Made a new friend, a new brother,
Heck yeah.
for sure. And Wilson, one of my best friends. I'm just super stoked to be able to share the elk woods with you. I told you when you moved out here, you were like, hey, you should come elk hunt with me. And I was like, okay.
I will. And then part of me was like, yeah, a lot of people say that, right? Like, heck yeah, but they don't know the commitment that it takes and the hell you're going to get put through when you get here.
Yeah, my feet have paid the price for it. I don't have any skin on the back of my heels on either foot at this point.
Mine and Kobe's feet are looking fresh and like we just got some manicures. And
mine have tape all over them. Like I look like I'm getting ready to enter a football game, like I'm spatted up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's pretty gnarly.
Really depleted my med kit.
Oh, man.
Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and jump off here. I hope everyone's season is going well. If you're in the elk woods chasing elk or whatever it is that you might be chasing out west, I hope things are going well for y'all. And if you are hitting up any of those early whitetail openers, like I know I got some buddies right now that were in, as we speak, one of my buddies I think is in Delaware for some whitetail velvet, which opened up, and some folks in Nebraska. Another buddy a couple buddies actually heading to Kentucky. So if you're hitting any of those early whitetail openers, I hope you guys are slaying it, laying them down and filling some tags. And as always, I want to thank you all for listening. All right, gang. So this is the second half of the podcast. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to record it while we were on the mountain. We kind of ran out of time. So I will give you the rundown of what happened after those last couple hunts that we kind of described. So after we recorded the first half of this podcast, that afternoon, we did go back into that spot where we had the encounter on the first day. And the wind was a little squirrely when we first got in there, so we had to kind of lay back. It's really kind of like this meadow that is on top of this ridge. It's kind of like on the side hill of the ridge. And there's a really thick timber as you kind of get to it. And I think as we mentioned earlier, the elk like to kind of bed off the point of this ridge and kind of down off the one, I guess it would be the eastern side of the ridge, I believe. At any rate, we kind of hung back at the timber's edge because we knew the elk like to, kind of bed below that meadow, and we just weren't getting the right wind quite yet. And so we were waiting for the wind to switch. And when we finally started getting the wind to switch a little bit, and gave us really kind of an iffy wind, if you will, it was good enough to try to get the job done, but it was going to be touch and go. So the reality of it is we didn't push in quite as far as we wanted to, because we knew that the morning play was going to be good, and we just didn't want to booger up the area for the morning. So we didn't push in quite as far as we wanted to, and kind of laid back, kind of like part way. And just like that, everything that held true at that spot earlier in the trip, I don't even know how long we were sitting. It wasn't very long. Then all of a sudden you hear elk kind of milling around in there, however far in the timber it might be, 40 yards, 50 yards, whatever it is. So we might be 60 yards from them because we were maybe 20 yards from the timber's edge, kind of tucked into these pine trees, or they might have been aspens. But regardless, we were tucked into these trees, had a really good setup. The wind was pretty decent for where those elk were at. We weren't going to bust anything up. We weren't going to booger anything up. I mean, it just kept sounding like these elk were going to pop out behind this one little, spruce tree that was there. And it was going to be maybe like a 20-yard shot. Again, it's so crazy in this area that it's so thick that you might be 20 yards away from elk. And, maybe at 20 yards you can see them. But at 20 yards, there's not a guarantee that you're actually going to have a shot because it's so thick. So we weren't able to see them. We were just able to hear them. And there were a couple in there we could hear milling around in different locations. And that kind of went on for a little while. And they milled off to wherever they were going to go to. And, they probably hung out in that general area for maybe 30, I don't know, I'm going to guesstimate because my memory's a little foggy on a bit, like 30 to 45 minutes maybe. We kind of heard them, pecking around in there. And so fast forward to the morning, we kind of get back, make a game plan. We look at the weather, and know that the wind is going to be what we're looking for the morning. And so the plan really was that, we've been kind of pecking at the edges, so to speak, a little bit. And without bulls really bugling at all or calling, it's like we can't really locate anything, right? They're not making a peep. And so we're really just kind of having to still hunt areas and kind of incrementally kind of creep our way through the timber, getting closer to where we think we know where elk might be, holing up and bedding. And so the next morning we get in there and we got in there bright and early, before the elk got back into that area and kind of got below them a little bit. So the thermals were dropping off the side of that ridge. And everything was kind of in our favor at that point because we kind of came in below them. And then we kind of held tight. We didn't press in super close because the plan was that day we knew there was a bull that liked to bed off the point of this ridge system. Wilson jumped him there last season in early part of the year, and he bumped him out of there this early part of the summer when he went in to hang some trail cameras and stuff like that and got a good visual of him. And he was a really good bull. We actually had one on camera in that area. And he was a nice 4x4 bull. And this bull that Wilson had seen previously was a good 6x6. So that was kind of our play, was like, what, we've kind of played it cool around his area, thinking that he was still kind of in that general area and kind of focusing on the herd and trying to get a chance to see if maybe he's checking the herd out and maybe we can catch him that way before we kind of blow up the spot. And so this was really the last hunt on the mountain that day for that particular area. So we were kind of going for broke. We're like, look, we're going to push all the way in to where that camera is. We're going to check it, and then we're going to push into where his bed is and see if we can, entice him to come play ball. And so as the wind was switching, thermals were switching, kind of starting to rise up the ridge now, we were able to kind of move up the side of the ridge and kind of get over top where the elk were bedded. And now we had the perfect wind to kind of work into that bedding area. And so we started working down that point. Reality was when we got in there in the morning super early, again, right off the bat, elk coming to bed. We had them, we heard them. Again, they were probably 40 to 60 yards from us. You can hear them plain as day, but just not able to get a visual. And there was, who knows how many was in there. I mean, we heard like a handful of them. So there's, they bed all along that ridge. So it could have been any number of elk in that general area. And so once the thermals kind of switched for us and we started getting the right wind to kind of make a play out the rest of that ridge, so we didn't potentially blow that bull out, we got up on the side of the ridge, kind of made our way to the point, dropped down off, and we're headed down to, we wanted to stop at that point and just kind of like hang out because there's like a little meadow again off the point. So there's one off the side, there's one off the point. And we want to just kind of hang out there and listen for a little bit, maybe do a little cow calling to see if, there's any elk kind of in the general area. And we hear a cow call back to us. And the first one sounded pretty good. And, we hung tight for a second. And then we call back, however many minutes went by, 5-10 minutes or whatever. And we call back. Cow calls back. And this time it sounds kind of funky. And we're like, that didn't sound real consistent. And so we were like, we think that's a person. Now, mind you, this would have been Friday of the first full weekend because the season came in on a Tuesday. And so we kind of expected there were going to be more people in there than we had. We basically had the mountain to ourselves for the most part the entire time up until Friday. And sure enough, there was a guy that was walking up the backside of that ridge, basically through all the elk bedding that is there and right through that bull's bedding area. Which really kind of bummed us out because, maybe the lesson learned there is that you don't play it super safe whenever you have those types of conditions and, elk aren't talking and you maybe just need to go for broke. So we talked to that fella. Wilson got a little bit of intel from him just from the conversation to learn a little bit more about the area just through conversation. So hopefully that'll help him out as he goes through the rest of his season. And so that hunt was done then at that point. He walked through all the good stuff. So we made our way down to the camera, checked the camera. There was a good bull on that camera, I think 2 different times, had a moose, a couple of really good bucks that Wilson will have a chance to chase this year. And then we just kind of hoofed it back to camp. And the plan, we stayed to our plan because we were like, hey, we have that bottom piece that, we were in elk in that area and it's super elky and that, it's just like, I think we mentioned it previously. It's like an old dozer road kind of push out, a lot of side hilling through there and just gnarly thick. But there's a game trail through there that's walkable. And so you can kind of walk, basically make your way all around like this mountainside. But the one area in particular had like a decent old wallow, and just a ton of elk sign in that general area. You can clearly see where they were coming out of the timber, a couple areas where they were kind of coming out headed to that wallow. So into the water, it was the one place where there was like a water seep in this saddle that was coming off the mountain that still held water. And so as hot as it had been, we're talking 80s and even 90s, 90 plus degrees. We figured water, especially that day was going to potentially be key. It might be a nice place to set up. And so that was the plan for that evening. So we pulled camp, got out of there, made the 2-mile hike down to the truck with all of our gear, threw it in the truck. And then that evening walked into that piece where we had heard some elk earlier in the week. Got tucked in and set up. So this time, instead of playing it cool and trying to stay on the outside of the timber edge and let them kind of come to the water's edge or come down toward that wallow, we actually got up into the timber maybe just 20 yards, right? Because it's so thick up there. And there's not really like distinct game trails. Like you'll all of a sudden see a game trail and then it'll just, it might be 30 yards and then all of a sudden it'll just peter out. Right. And then it just gets into like blowdown and just like nastiness. And so we kind of saw where they wanted to cross this mountain seep, the seep that was coming off the mountain. And so that was as good a place as any. And so I had a shot there and I had a shot to where they were working down off the other side of the ridge, other side of the saddle into this meadow, into, down toward the wallow. So I had a couple, probably the best shooting opportunities I was going to have sitting in the timber. So we sat there that night and man, we felt killer about that setup. Like, I mean, we all, I wish Koby was on to kind of tell the story, but he actually brought, a celebratory bottle of hooch in his pack and didn't tell anybody because he just had the feeling that it was going to go down because that spot was just primo. And unfortunately, man, it was just super weird. It was really probably the only hunt or the only sit that we had that we didn't hear elk or see elk. It was just eerily quiet. There was nothing in there at all. And we had a great wind. I mean, the wind was actually kind of funky. If we would have sat out in that meadow, it would have been a little swirly. But our access was good. And then once we got into that seep, man, it was just, you'll hear guys that hunt big country or hunt, big drainages and stuff like that. Even if you're whitetail hunting, big drainages, you stay close to that water. And especially if you have really kind of dense dark timber, like is in North Idaho, your thermals just almost all time of day will drop into that seep and get sucked down that seep. And it's exactly what was happening. So the wind direction was actually in the elk's favor, and the actual thermal pool that we had set up right near that water was just sucking our scent right down it, out it, and right into that wallow. So anything that was going to come from where we had heard, whatever it was, 2 nights prior, or 3 evenings prior, whatever it was, would technically have the wind, but they would be, shit out of luck once they got to that seep to get a drink. And we heard them drinking in it, a couple nights before. But eerily quiet, didn't see anything, didn't hear anything. And so we were kind of bummed about that because we really kind of thought that was going to be a great spot for that night. So we hoofed it back to the truck because at this point we had pulled camp. And once we got back to the truck, Wilson's buddy, Clancy, actually met us there and was coming out just to hunt with us on Saturday morning. He went and kind of did a walkabout. We get back to the trucks and Clancy's got a table set up with a couple chairs. He's got a small grill set up, and he's got 4 big fat steaks waiting for us to throw on the grill. And so he threw steaks on the grill, cooked them up, and we had some potato salad, just like some good. It was well needed after however many days on the mountain eating mountain house and just getting after it and climbing up and down the ridges. So it was much appreciated that Clancy came out and did that. So we all kind of sat around, had a good dinner, chopped it up a little bit, had some laughs, had a blast. And then we basically just truck camped that night. I slept in the back of Wilson's truck. Wilson threw his tent out. Koby slept in the back of his truck, and Clancy did the same thing. And we got up Saturday morning, and there was one other ridge that we all kind of had seen that we were like, really kind of want to check that out. Kind of caught everybody's eye. So we were like, what, let's make one push through that, get to the top. There's a couple of drainages after we get to the top that we kind of want to walk down through and see what's happening. So we start walking up, and this thing is just ridiculously steep. We're just kind of creeping along, going slow. We ended up bumping what sounded like an elk at, we were maybe only 50 yards into the woods at that point, and bumped something out of like this blowdown and went crashing away. We kind of all heard it at the same time, couldn't really tell how far away it was, 100%. We just kind of all heard something and made our way the rest of the way up the mountain. The funny thing was that, even though I'm out there, North Idaho elk hunting, mind is never too far away from whitetails. And so came across what I would refer to as a Troy Pottinger Northern Idaho drainage community scrape special. Like, I saw exactly what Troy has talked about on the podcast. If you go back and listen to any of those, I saw exactly what that setup looks like, because I ran across just like a monster scrape in one of the gnarliest areas that I had been in that entire trip. And it's clear why that deer is using it. I mean, he's got food for days, he's got cover for days, he's got escapability for days. And that is just a gnarly place to try to get into. And as we got closer to the top, we found some like hammer rubs. I mean, I found a giant rub, probably one of the biggest whitetail rubs I'd ever seen. And so found a bunch of killer deer sign up there and a little bit of elk sign, but not a whole lot. And so it didn't really hold what we thought it would hold. So we were making our way back down the mountain to leave. This was really the last hunt of the trip. And as we're walking down, Koby's taking some pictures, and he stands on this log to take a picture. And I don't know if we even mentioned it earlier, he in the first half of the podcast, but he got nailed by a bald-faced hornet in his tent, like in the leg. And that thing just like swelled up and got all weird looking and sore. And there was just tons of bees everywhere on this trip. And he's standing on this log, and he just happened to be standing in like a yellow jacket's nest that flew up, and he had his side of his pants vents unzipped, and they flew inside of his pant leg, lit him up. I don't even know how many times he got stung. I want to say like 6 or 7, something like that, additional times to the one that they already had. And so we basically took off kind of like, this mountain was so steep, we're coming down, like we're kind of like taking our time because you're almost falling down the mountain. It's so steep. But once those bees popped out, man, everyone found their sea legs real quick and did like a 30, 40 yard dash down the side of this mountain without falling, which was kind of incredible. And then at that point, the hunt was kind of over. It's like we were busted, pretty busted up. Koby's legs were pretty torched from the bees. It was hot. And it was, at that, we hadn't seen anything worth kind of expending any more energy on that side of the ridge. I mean, we'd had to walk back up it and kind of like loop back around the whole side of that ridge. And so it was really one of those things where it was time to pack it in. I needed to get to a place where I could kind of organize all my gear and get ready to fly out because I had a flight the next day to catch. So Wilson, I did go back with Clancy and actually jump on his boat for a little bit and cruise around the lake. I got to see a little bit of the Coeur d'Alene Lake and some of the houses and stuff around that. And just spend, we actually had a rainstorm push us out, but got to spend probably like an hour out on the water, just kind of relaxing, chilling, which was a nice way to kind of end the trip. And then after that, went back to Wilson's place, crashed out, got up the next day and caught a flight back to Pennsylvania and took the red eye. And that's kind of why I sound tired now, because I literally got back just a little bit ago and have slept like not at all today. But wanted to get this podcast put together before I forgot. So that was pretty much the trip, man. It was a blast. Had a great time. I look forward to going back out. I know a little bit more about that area. I think to do it over again, I would probably wait, maybe another week to 2 weeks before I'd go out. Because I think, that area to hunt is tough in general. And I see whenever I spoke with Troy just about hunting whitetails, but just anything in general out there, it's hard. It's steep. Like when I say it's steep, it's like, it's one of the steepest places I've been, like, whether it was Montana or whatever. Like this was some of the steepest country. The elevation wasn't as high as I've been in the past. Because I think we were right around like 5,400 feet roughly. Was like the peaks. But just like the amount of vertical feet you traverse in a short period of time is brutal, and your legs are torched. And just the thickness of the woods overall. I mean, to hunt the way we were hunting, which was basically trying to hunt elk like you hunt early season whitetails, either finding where they're bedded and trying to set up on them, or still hunting them, into their bedding areas, is a hard way to go about it. And making another trip out there, I would definitely go out a little later, whenever bulls will be more apt to be bugling and talking. I'm not going to say it'll make it easy, but it'll make it a little bit easier to know where you need to be. Because, I mean, to be honest with you, Wilson did a great job even just locating elk. Because if it weren't for that, I don't know that we would have heard elk, seen elk at all the entire trip. Because the only reason we were even really seeing anything or in the game, by and large, we were in elk almost every hunt. We were in close proximity where we were hearing them walking, we were hearing them working through the woods. If it wasn't for the work that he did, like, I'd be hard pressed to say we would have heard anything or seen anything. It was the work that he had done to kind of locate some herds that he knew where they were spending some time, that we were able to kind of walk in and kind of get on them right away. Because without them bugling and talking, without the information he had, we would have been basically just throwing darts at a dartboard in the dark. So all in all, it was an awesome trip. Had a great time with good buddies. I want to give a shout out to Koby for filming it, and he got stung and stuff like that. So he was a trooper. Didn't complain one bit after he got lit up. He just kind of like hammered it along. And dude is a super talented photographer and videographer. So if you haven't, or you may not have, but I would recommend just going to Instagram and checking him out and giving his page a follow. Dude takes killer photos. His Instagram handle is Koby, Koby.Owens, Owens, and give him a follow and check out what he's got going on. He's doing a bunch of other hunts this year, a bunch of out west stuff, and he's got a lot of killer content to kind of check out from a photography standpoint. So you'll definitely dig that. And then he and I may link up later in the season. We'll see. We'll see if that happens. And then Wilson Mcswain, you guys know that, you know my buddy there. So Wilson, .jboyd Mcswain, or just look up Wilson Mcswain on Instagram to follow along with him. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. It was a blast. Elk season is over, unfortunately. If I could, I would make one more trip out there, maybe for rifle season, if I could, but I don't think it's going to be in the cards. So we are going to now shift gears and be fully dedicated to Whitetails. PA opener is on, for me at least, is the 17th of September. I think it's the 17th. So we got that happening. And then I have my upcoming Kansas trip. So for those of you out there that season has started, I hope you guys are finding success. For those of you that haven't started yet, hang on. It's just around the corner. And with that, thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you on the flip. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Spartan Forge, Exodus, and Skull Brew Coffee Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.